"We don't need you," my son Scott shouted during my grandson's birthday party and chased me out of the house. I raised his children, paid for their house, and he humiliated me in front of everyone. So at my grandson's graduation, I stood up, took the microphone and said, "I have a gift for you." The audience was crying, and Scott turned pale. They thought they had destroyed me, but I was just getting started. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The front door of Scott's house glowed under the porch light, a beacon in the April dusk. I adjusted my tie, the silk catching on my calloused fingers, and shifted the gift in my hands. The package crinkled, its red wrapping as loud as my heartbeat. Inside, laughter spilled out, kids shrieking, adults chuckling, the clink of glasses. Michael's 17th birthday. My grandson. My pride. The old watch on my wrist ticked, a steady rhythm from the days when Scott was still small enough to hold. I smiled and stepped inside. The foyer smelled of vanilla cake and candle wax. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling, their strings swaying like lazy dancers. I scanned the crowd, neighbors, friends, my grandkids darting between legs. Scott stood by the bar, pouring wine, his jaw tight. Jennifer, his wife, flitted between guests, her smile sharp as a blade. I caught Michael's eye across the room. He waved, his grin wide, and my chest warmed. I'd spent weeks picking out his gift, a leather-bound journal, like the one I'd given Scott when he turned 17. I wove through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces, until I reached the dessert table. My elbow brushed a glass of Merlot. It tipped, splashing crimson across Jennifer's pristine cream rug. The stain bloomed like a wound. Heads turned. I froze, the gift still clutched in one hand. "Really, Douglas?" Jennifer's voice cut through the chatter, her tone dripping with disdain. She stood with arms crossed, her diamond earrings glinting. "That rug cost more than your car." "It was an accident," I said, kneeling to dab at the mess with a napkin. My knees creaked, betraying my age. "I'll pay for the cleaning." Scott strode over, his polished shoes clicking on the hardwood. "You always do this," he snapped, his voice louder than necessary. "Clumsy, meddling, every time." The room quieted. I stood, my face hot. Michael lingered nearby, his shoulders hunched, eyes on the floor. "Scott, it's just a rug," I said, keeping my voice even. "Let's not ruin Michael's night." "Ruin?" Scott laughed, a harsh bark. "You're the one ruining everything. Always in our business, throwing your money around like it makes you king." Jennifer stepped closer, her perfume sharp. "We don't need you hovering, Douglas. We're fine without you." My grip tightened on the gift, the wrapping crinkling under my fingers. "I've only ever tried to help," I said, glancing at Michael. His younger siblings, Ellie and Sam, peeked from behind their mother, wide-eyed. "Help?" Scott's face reddened, his wine glass trembling in his hand. "You think we can't survive without your handouts? You're pathetic." The word hit like a slap. I opened my mouth, but Jennifer cut in, her voice low and venomous. "You're embarrassing yourself. And us." The crowd shifted, whispers rippling. Michael took a step forward, his voice small. "Dad, stop. Enough." Scott slammed his glass on the table, the stem snapping. Wine dribbled onto the rug, mixing with the stain. "You're not needed here, Dad. Get out." The air left my lungs. I stood rooted, the gift heavy in my hands. Every eye in the room burned into me. Michael's lips parted, a quiet, "Grandpa, don't go," slipping out before Scott's glare silenced him. My chest ached, but something else flickered beneath the pain, a spark of anger, small but alive. I turned, my steps slow, the gift still unopened in my hands. The door loomed ahead, its brass knob cold under my palm. I stepped outside. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing in the wet night air. Rain pattered on my shoulders, soaking the gifts wrapping until it sagged like a deflated balloon. I stood on the lawn, staring at the glowing windows. The silhouettes of the party moving on without me. I'd given them everything, my time, my money, my heart. How could they do this? The rain stung my eyes, but I didn't move. Not yet. The rain followed me home, drumming on the roof of my apartment like a funeral march. I sank into the armchair, still in my damp jacket, a glass of water trembling in my hand. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp that cast shadows across the faded wallpaper. A photo of my grandkids, Michael, Ellie, Sam, sat on the shelf, their smiles frozen in a summer long gone. The old watch on my wrist ticked, each second a reminder of time I'd never get back. I stared at the glass, the water rippling with every shake of my fingers. My mind drifted to Scott, back when he was just a boy. After Ellen died, it was just us. I'd sit at the kitchen table, bleary-eyed from a double shift, helping him with algebra. His pencil would scratch the paper, his brow furrowed, and I'd nudge him, saying, "You've got this, kid." Every overtime check went to his college fund, every spare hour to his dreams. I didn't sleep much back then, but his grin made it worth it. "You're the best, Dad," he'd say, and I believed him. The memory shifted. Michael was 5, all gangly limbs and toothy smiles, chasing a soccer ball across a muddy field. I'd drive him to practice, my old truck rattling, while Scott and Jennifer worked late. I'd cheer until my throat hurt, even when he missed the goal. Later, I'd sit with Ellie and Sam, reading bedtime stories, their small hands clutching my fingers. I built model planes with Michael, the glue sticking to our fingertips, his laughter filling the room. I sent checks for their mortgage, month after month, without a word. Scott never said thank you. I told myself it didn't matter. I blinked, back in the present. The glass was cold against my palm. I thought they were my family, I muttered, my voice swallowed by the empty room. What am I to them now? The photo on the shelf stared back, Michael's eyes so like Scott's at that age. I'd given them everything, my savings, my nights, my life. And for what? To be tossed out like garbage? My chest tightened, not just with pain but with something sharper. Enough, I said, the word cutting through the silence. I slammed the glass on the table, water splashing across the wood, pooling like the stain on Jennifer's rug. The sound jolted me, a crack in the dam of my restraint. I wasn't done. Not yet. I stood, my knees stiff, and crossed to the shelf. The photo gleamed under the lamp, my grandkids' faces a tether to something worth fighting for. I won't give up, I whispered, my voice steady for the first time that night. I turned toward the bedroom, my steps slow but sure. At the hallway table, I paused by the phone, my hand hovering over it. Someone needed to hear me. Someone needed to know I wasn't broken. The bell above the cafe door jingled as I stepped inside, the morning air thick with the scent of roasted coffee. The place buzzed, baristas calling orders, customers tapping on laptops, the hum of conversation. I adjusted my jacket, the fabric stiff from last week's rain, and twisted the old watch on my wrist. Its ticking grounded me, a faint pulse against the chaos in my head. I'd come to talk to Scott, to fix what broke at Michael's party. I scanned the room and spotted him at a corner table, Jennifer beside him, her manicured nails tapping her phone. I ordered a black coffee, the barista's smile too bright for my mood, and approached their table. Scott's eyes flicked up, narrowing. Jennifer's lips curved, but her gaze was ice. I cleared my throat. "Scott, can we talk?" My voice was steady, though my pulse wasn't. "I want to make this right." Scott leaned back, arms crossed. "You serious?" His tone was sharp, like he'd been waiting to cut me. "You think you can just waltz in and fix everything?" Jennifer set her phone down, her smile tightening. "Douglas, we're trying to have a quiet morning. You're making it difficult." I slid into the chair across from them, ignoring the knot in my stomach. I'm your father, Scott. I've only ever wanted to help. Let's not do this again. Help? Scott's laugh was bitter. Loud enough to draw glances from nearby tables. You call smothering us help? You're always there, always meddling, waving your checks like some savior. My hands clenched under the table. I paid for your house, I said, keeping my voice low. I raised your kids when you were too busy. That's not meddling. That's family. Jennifer leaned forward, her voice soft but venomous. Family doesn't embarrass us in front of everyone, Douglas. We don't need your kind of help. The cafe's noise faded, the air heavy with their words. Scott shoved his coffee cup, the liquid sloshing onto the saucer. You're clueless, he said, his voice rising. You think you're this big hero, but you're just pathetic. The word stung, worse than at the party. I felt the eyes of strangers, their whispers like needles. My chest burned, but I forced myself to speak. I'm not here to fight. I just want to see my grandkids. To be part of their lives. Scott stood, his chair scraping the floor. Stay away from my family, he spat, loud enough for the whole cafe to hear. You're nothing to us. Nothing. Jennifer touched his arm, her voice calm but cruel. Go home, Douglas. You're only making this worse. The room spun. Every glance, every hushed word, pierced me. But beneath the shame, something else grew, a fire, hot and unyielding. I stood, my hands trembling, and met Scott's glare. I wanted to speak, to scream, but my throat locked. Instead, I turned and walked out, the bell jangling behind me. Rain started to fall, light but cold, as I stepped onto the sidewalk. My shoes slapped the wet pavement, each step heavier than the last. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd crawl away. They were wrong. The office smelled of old paper and dust, a faint reminder of my years hauling logistics deals together. Rain tapped the window, steady as a heartbeat, while the desk lamp cast a weak glow across my hands. Papers sprawled before me, receipts, contracts, memories of a life spent building something for them. My fingers brushed the edge of a photo, my grandkids' faces half hidden under a stray sheet. I pushed it aside. No distractions. Not tonight. The watch on my wrist felt heavy, its ticking a chain to the past. I unclasped it, set it on the desk, and exhaled. Time to let go. Scott's voice echoed from the cafe, sharp as a blade, you're nothing to us. I'd replayed it 100 times, each word carving deeper. I'd given him everything, my savings, my nights, my pride. For what? To be spat out like I was nothing. My eyes stung, but I blinked it away. Enough self-pity. I flipped through the papers, my hand steadier now. A document caught my eye, the mortgage agreement for Scott's house. My name, my signature, my money keeping their perfect life afloat. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. Scott's house, with its polished floors and smug address, wasn't his. It was mine. Every payment, every cent, came from me. I'd signed the checks without a word, thinking it was for family. But family didn't humiliate you in front of strangers. Family didn't tell you to disappear. I held the paper, its edges worn, and something clicked. I wasn't just the father they'd kicked out. I was the one holding their world together. My chest tightened, not with pain but with clarity. I could pull the rug out from under them, just like they'd done to me. The thought sent a jolt through me, not guilt but power. I opened my laptop, the screen's glow harsh against the dim room. My fingers hovered over the keys, then typed, Westport Bank, Mortgage Services. I scrolled through contacts, found the number, and grabbed the phone. My heart thudded, but my voice was steady when the line picked up. This is Douglas Evans, I said, the words firm. I need to check the status of a mortgage. My son's house. The banker's voice was polite, clipped. Can you confirm the account details, sir? I rattled off the numbers, my eyes on the document. The pen in my hand twitched, underlining figures as she spoke, balances, payment schedules, my name tied to every line. And the next steps, I said, if I wanted to, adjust my involvement. She hesitated, then explained the process. Simple. Clean. Devastating. I thanked her, my grip tight on the pen. It wasn't just about the money. It was about showing them I wasn't invisible. I hung up, the silence louder than the rain. My gaze drifted to the window, where the storm was easing, a faint glow breaking through the clouds. They'll see who I am, I whispered, my voice low but sure. I stood, grabbed my coat, and tucked the mortgage document into my pocket. The office door clicked shut behind me, the sound sharp in the quiet night. I stepped into the drizzle, my steps light, the paper a weight I was ready to wield. The bank's glass doors hissed open, letting in a gust of morning air. Sunlight bounced off the marble floor, stinging my eyes as I clutched the folder of documents. My shoes clicked, echoing in the hum of the lobby, clients murmuring, tellers typing, a distant phone ringing. I adjusted the watch on my wrist, its familiar tick a reminder of what I was about to unravel. The folder felt alive, pulsing with the power to upend Scott's world. I straightened my jacket and joined the line, my resolve as solid as the stone beneath my feet. The teller waved me to a desk where a manager, a woman with a crisp blazer and a tight smile, waited. Mr. Evans, she said, glancing at my folder. How can I assist you? I sat, the chair cold against my back. I want to stop payments on my son's mortgage, I said, sliding the folder across the desk. My voice was even, but my pulse raced. I'm done covering it. Her eyebrows lifted, just a fraction. This is a significant change. Can I see the account details? I opened the folder, pointing to my signature on the agreement. It's all here. I've been paying for years. I'm stopping. Today. She scanned the papers, her fingers tapping the keyboard. You're listed as the primary guarantor, she said, her tone neutral. If you withdraw, the responsibility falls to the borrower. They'll need to cover the payments immediately. Good, I said, leaning forward. That's exactly what I want. Her eyes flicked to mine, searching. This could have serious consequences, Mr. Evans. For them. I nodded, my jaw tight. I know. I'm ready. She handed me a form, the paper crisp and heavy. I took the pen, its weight grounding me. Each stroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Douglas Evans, I signed, the letters bold. I'd carried their lives for too long, Scott's house, Jennifer's status, their perfect facade. No more. The pen scratched the final line, and I exhaled, a weight lifting. The manager collected the form, her expression unreadable. It's done, she said. The account will reflect your withdrawal by end of day. They'll be notified. I stood, the folder lighter now. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Outside, the sun warmed my face, the air clean after days of rain. I paused on the sidewalk, the world sharp and vivid. Scott's face flashed in my mind, his shock, his panic when the bank called. I felt a thrill, but also a flicker of doubt. Was I ready for their anger? For the fallout? I shook it off. They'd made their choice. I slid into my car, the folder on the passenger seat, and glanced at my phone. No calls yet, but they'd come. Scott would scream, Jennifer would scheme, and I'd be waiting. I started the engine, the rumble steadying me. Let them try, I muttered, my lips curling. The road stretched ahead, and I pressed the gas, ready for what came next. The phone buzzed on my kitchen table, shattering the quiet of my apartment. I stared at the screen, Scott's name flashing like a warning. The clock on my wrist ticked, each second pulling me closer to the fight I'd known was coming. My coffee steamed, untouched, its bitterness matching the air. I picked up the phone, my hand steady, and answered. "Hello, Scott. You bastard." His voice exploded through the line, raw and ragged. "You stopped the payments? You're ruining us." I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking. "You said I was nothing," I said, my tone calm, deliberate. "I'm just proving you right." Papers rustled on his end, a chaotic clatter. "Do you know what you've done?" he shouted. "The bank's calling, threatening foreclosure. My kids, your grandkids, could lose their home." Jennifer's voice cut in. Sharp and pleading, a snake in silk. "Douglas, how could you? We're family. Think of Michael, Ellie, Sam." I sipped my coffee, the heat grounding me. "You didn't think of them when you threw me out," I said. "Or when you humiliated me in that cafe." The memory of the bank flashed, my pen gliding across the form, each signature a cut to their lifeline. I'd felt it then, the shift in power, the moment their world tilted. I set the mug down, the ceramic clinking softly. "You wanted independence," I said. "Now you've got it." Scott's breath hitched, a mix of rage and panic. "I'll sue you," he snarled. "I'll drag you through every court in Connecticut. You'll regret this." Jennifer grabbed the phone again, her voice low, venomous. "You're a spiteful old man, Douglas. You'll pay for this. We'll make sure of it." I almost laughed. Their threats were hollow, a desperate scramble to regain control. "Do what you want," I said, my voice like steel. "I'm done playing your game." A crash echoed through the line, something heavy, maybe a book, hitting the floor. Ellie's voice, small and scared, called out in the background. "Dad, what's wrong?" My heart twitched, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about them. It was about Scott and Jennifer, their greed, their cruelty. "You're a monster," Scott spat, his voice breaking. "You hear me? A monster." I hung up, the silence sudden and heavy. My pulse thrummed, but my hands didn't shake. I glanced at the clock, its hands steady, marking the time I'd reclaimed. They thought they could bully me, break me. They were wrong. I crossed to my desk, the laptop's glow welcoming me. My fingers hovered over the keys, ready for the next move. Whatever it was, I'd be ready. The lawyer's office smelled of leather and polished wood, a sharp contrast to the rain-soaked streets outside. Sunlight sliced through the blinds, painting stripes across the mahogany desk. I sat, the folder of documents heavy in my lap, my fingers tracing its worn edges. The watch on my wrist ticked, a faint reminder of time I'd spent on others. I adjusted it, the metal cool against my skin, and met the lawyer's gaze. His nameplate read Harold Gaines, and his eyes were sharp, like he'd seen 100 stories like mine. "Mr. Evans," Harold began, leaning forward, "let's review your position." His voice was smooth, practiced. I nodded, my jaw tight, and slid the folder across the desk. I'd been here before, years ago, when Scott's IT company teetered on the edge. I'd loaned him $50,000, my savings, to keep it afloat. He'd hugged me then, promising to pay it back. The checks never came. Instead, I got excuses, then silence. I saw him now, in my mind's eye, signing contracts with that smug grin, building his empire on my dime. My chest ached, but not with regret, with clarity. He'd used me, and I'd let him. Harold flipped through the papers, his pen tapping. "The mortgage withdrawal was clean," he said. "Scott has no legal grounds to sue. You were the guarantor, not the borrower. He's on the hook now." "Good," I said, my voice low. "What else?" He raised an eyebrow, then pulled out a file. "Your son's company. It's in worse shape than he lets on. Over-leveraged, late on vendor payments. He's been dodging creditors for months. I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. How bad? Bad enough, Harold said, sliding a spreadsheet across. He's been using your mortgage payments to float the business. Without them, he's exposed. One wrong move, and his creditors could call in their debts. I scanned the numbers, my pen underlining figures that screamed Scott's weakness. His company, his pride, was a house of cards. I could push, and it would fall. But a flicker of doubt crept in. Michael, Ellie, Sam. Would they get caught in the collapse? I gripped the pen tighter, the ink smearing under my thumb. Can he pin this on me? I asked. Harold shook his head. You're in the clear. The loan to his company was informal, no contract. He'd have to admit his mismanagement to even try a lawsuit. He won't risk it. I exhaled, the weight in my chest shifting. This was my leverage, a blade I could wield. Scott thought he'd outsmarted me, but he'd built his life on my foundation. Now, I'd shake it. I scribbled a note, creditors, public records, my mind racing. But Michael's face flashed, his grin from soccer games, his voice calling me Grandpa. Could I do this without hurting him? I stood, thanking Harold with a firm handshake. You've given me plenty to work with, I said, tucking the folder under my arm. Outside, the sun burned bright, but a chill lingered in my bones. I'd started this to reclaim my dignity, but the stakes felt heavier now. My phone buzzed as I reached the sidewalk, a missed call from Michael glowing on the screen. My heart skipped. I tightened my grip on the folder and headed for my car, the call unanswered for now. The apartment was quiet when I got home, the only sound the patter of rain against the windows. My shoes left damp prints on the hardwood as I dropped my keys on the counter. The lamp cast a soft glow, catching the edges of a photo on the shelf, Michael, Ellie, Sam, their smiles bright against a faded summer sky. The frame had a crack, a thin scar from a move years ago. My watch ticked, steady as ever, grounding me. I sank onto the couch, the missed call from Michael burning in my mind. The phone sat heavy in my hand, his name glowing like a lifeline. I hit call, my heart thudding. It rang twice before he picked up, his voice a hushed whisper. Grandpa? You there? Michael, I said, my throat tight. I'm here, kid. I'm in my room, he said, barely audible. Had to wait till Mom and Dad were downstairs. They're mad about the house stuff. I leaned forward, the phone pressed to my ear. I know. I'm sorry you're caught in this. It's not your fault, he said, his voice cracking. Dad shouldn't have kicked you out. I hate how they treat you. His words hit like a warm wave, thawing the ice in my chest. I saw him years back, a skinny kid chasing a soccer ball, his laughter echoing across the field. I'd been there every game, cheering until my voice gave out, while Scott and Jennifer worked late. Those moments were ours, untarnished by their greed. You don't need to apologize, I said, my voice soft. None of this is on you. He paused, the silence heavy. I miss you, Grandpa. Things aren't the same without you. I closed my eyes, my fingers tightening around the phone. I miss you too, Michael. More than you know. There's something else, he said, his whisper urgent. My graduation's next week. I want you there. Please. But don't tell Dad. He'll flip. My breath caught. The community center, the stage, Michael in his cap and gown, it was a chance to see him, to hold on to what mattered. But Scott's shadow loomed, his threats from the phone call still fresh. I'll be there, I said, the words a vow. I promise. Really? His voice lifted, a spark of hope. They're checking names at the door, but I'll figure something out. Just, be there. I will, I said, my chest aching with a mix of joy and fear. You focus on graduating. I've got this. He laughed, a quiet sound that carried me back to better days. Thanks, Grandpa. You're the best. We hung up, the silence louder now. I crossed to the shelf, my fingers brushing the cracked frame. The rain drummed harder, but inside, something warmed. Michael's voice had reminded me why I was fighting, not just for revenge, but for them. I grabbed a calendar from the drawer, my hand steady as I circled the graduation date. The marker squeaked, a small sound in the quiet night, but it felt like a step toward something bigger. The community center buzzed with life, its glass doors reflecting a sea of balloons and banners. Laughter and music spilled out, mingling with the scent of roses pinned to proud parents' lapels. I stood across the street, the ticket Michael had slipped me tucked in my pocket, its edges worn from my nervous fingers. My watch gleamed under my sleeve, a secret I kept close. The crowd surged, families, teachers, kids in caps and gowns, celebrating the end of one chapter and the start of another. I adjusted my jacket, my heart pounding, and crossed the road, blending into the throng. The entrance loomed, flanked by two security guards in crisp uniforms. One held a clipboard, scanning names with a frown. I gripped the ticket, its ink smudged but legible, and stepped forward. "Douglas Evans," I said, my voice steady despite the sweat on my palms. The guard's eyes flicked to the clipboard, his pen tapping. "You're not on the list," he said, his tone flat. "No entry." My stomach dropped. Scott. He'd done this, made sure I'd be turned away. "There's a mistake," I said, holding out the ticket. "My grandson invited me." "Michael Evans." He shook his head, unmoved. "Orders from Scott Evans. No exceptions. Step aside." Anger flared, hot and sharp, but I swallowed it. I wasn't giving up, not when Michael was waiting. I stepped back, scanning the crowd, my mind racing. Then I saw him, Mr. Peterson, Michael's old history teacher, gray hair peeking from under a felt hat. He'd always liked me, shared coffee at parent nights, unaware of the rift with Scott. I caught his eye, waving casually, and approached. "Douglas." Peterson smiled, clapping my shoulder. "Here for Michael's big day?" "You bet," I said, forcing a grin. "Got a ticket, but there's a mix-up at the door. Mind if I walk in with you?" His brow furrowed, but he nodded. "Of course. Let's get you inside." I followed him, my head low, the guard's eyes sliding past us. Peterson chatted about Michael's college plans, oblivious to the pulse hammering in my ears. We passed the checkpoint, the ticket unneeded, and stepped into the hall. The air was warm, thick with applause and the glow of stage lights. I murmured thanks to Peterson, slipping away as he joined a group of teachers. The hall was packed, rows of chairs filled with beaming families. On stage, graduates lined up, Michael among them, his cap slightly crooked, his smile wide. My chest swelled, pride battling the knot of fear. I moved to the side, ducking behind a column draped in blue streamers. The scent of flowers hung heavy, grounding me. I scanned the crowd, my breath catching as I spotted Scott and Jennifer near the front, their heads bent together, oblivious to my presence. My hands clenched, the ticket crinkling in my pocket. I was here, against their will, for Michael. But seeing them stirred something else, a need to act, to make them feel the weight of their choices. I leaned against the column, its shadow cloaking me, and waited, my eyes locked on the stage, my mind sharp with purpose. The community center pulsed with light, the stage a blaze of gold and blue. Michael stood among the graduates, his cap tilted, his grin wide as he clutched his diploma. I lingered behind a column, its shadow cloaking me, the ticket in my pocket a quiet victory. My watch ticked under my sleeve, a steady pulse against the roar of applause. The air smelled of roses and wax, the crowd a sea of proud smiles and flashing cameras. But my eyes locked on Scott and Jennifer, their heads turning, their faces paling as they spotted me. My heart thudded, but I didn't flinch. Scott pushed through the crowd, his jaw tight, his steps sharp. "Get out," he hissed, stopping inches away, his breath hot. Or I'm calling security. Now. Jennifer stepped beside him, her eyes like daggers. You're humiliating us, she said, her voice low, venomous. Leave, Douglas, before you make this worse. I straightened, my voice calm but firm. I'm here for Michael. Not you. Scott's hand shot up, signaling to a guard near the door. You're done, he snapped. You don't belong here. The guard started toward us, but I moved first, slipping past Scott, my shoes silent on the polished floor. The stage was close, the microphone gleaming under the lights. I didn't plan it, not exactly, but my hand closed around the mic, the metal cool and heavy. The crowd hushed, heads turning, eyes pinning me. Scott froze, his arms still raised. Jennifer's lips parted, her face a mask of shock. I cleared my throat, the sound echoing. Family, I began, my voice steady, is about love. It's about showing up, no matter what. It's about giving everything, even when it hurts. I looked at Michael, his eyes wide, shining. I'm here for my grandson, because he's worth it. Because family doesn't give up. The words flowed, simple but raw. I spoke of sacrifice, of bonds that endure, never naming Scott or Jennifer but letting the truth hang heavy. A woman in the front row dabbed her eyes. A man nodded, his arms crossed. Michael stepped forward, his cap wobbling, and threw his arms around me. The crowd erupted, applause crashing like a wave. I held him tight, his warmth grounding me, his metal cool against my chest. I glanced at Scott and Jennifer. They stood rigid, their faces ashen, the crowd's eyes shifting to them, sharp with judgment. Scott's hand dropped, his signal to the guard forgotten. Jennifer clutched her purse, her knuckles white. The applause grew louder, a tide they couldn't stem. I felt their world crack, their perfect facade crumbling under the weight of 1,000 gazes. I handed the mic to a teacher, my arm around Michael as we stepped to the stage's edge. The crowd still clapped, but whispers rippled, neighbors, friends, their voices low but pointed. Scott and Jennifer exchanged a glance, their masks slipping. I caught the eye of their neighbor, Mrs. Larson, her head shaking as she leaned toward another woman, her lips moving fast. My chest tightened, not with fear but with something else, triumph, yes, but also a question. What came next? The hall's lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the polished floor. The music softened, a faint hum beneath the murmur of the crowd. I stood near the stage, Michael at my side, his hand brushing mine, his metal glinting under the chandeliers. My watch ticked, a quiet anchor in the chaos. The air carried the tang of champagne and wilting roses, but the mood had shifted. Eyes darted, whispers grew, and the weight of judgment settled like dust. Scott and Jennifer stood across the room, cornered by their own neighbors, their faces tight with strain. Mrs. Larson leaned toward a woman in a green dress, her voice low but clear. They threw him out. His own father. Can you believe it? The woman gasped, her hand covering her mouth, her eyes flicking to Scott. Another man, a local realtor, muttered, and he paid for their house. Unbelievable. Jennifer moved first, her heels clicking as she approached a cluster of women, her smile forced. You don't understand, she said, her voice high, brittle. It's complicated. Douglas isn't what he seems. The women exchanged glances, their smiles thin. One turned away, sipping her drink. Another murmured, really, Jennifer? After that speech? Jennifer's face flushed, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. She looked to Scott, but he stood frozen, his kell trembling in his hand, his eyes on the floor. I watched, my chest steady, my hands still. Their world was unraveling, stitch by stitch, and I didn't need to lift a finger. The crowd was doing it for me. A man in a suit, someone from their country club, clapped a hand on Scott's shoulder, his voice loud. You've got some explaining to do, Evans. Kicking out your dad. Low blow. Scott shrugged him off, his jaw clenched. It's not your business, he muttered, but his voice cracked, betraying him. The man raised an eyebrow, stepping back, and the whispers grew louder. I caught fragments, greedy, shameful, poor kids. My heart twinged at that. Michael, Ellie, Sam, they didn't deserve this fallout. But Scott and Jennifer. They'd built this cage themselves. Michael squeezed my arm, his voice soft. You did good, Grandpa. They're proud of you. He nodded toward the crowd, his eyes bright. I managed a smile, but my mind churned. I'd won, hadn't I? Their status, their pride, lay in tatters. Yet the victory felt heavy, tempered by the faces of my grandkids, who'd hear these whispers too. I stepped back, letting the crowd's judgment flow. Jennifer tried again, her voice rising as she spoke to a neighbor, but the woman walked away, her heels sharp against the floor. Scott's shoulders slumped, his calcetine untouched on a table, a small puddle forming beneath it. I stood tall, my gaze steady, feeling the room tilt in my favor. But then I saw him move, Scott, his steps slow, deliberate, heading toward me. My pulse quickened. Michael tensed beside me, but I didn't move. Scott stopped a few feet away, his eyes locked on mine, his face unreadable. The park near my apartment was alive with spring, the grass soft underfoot, the air thick with the scent of blooming lilacs. Michael kicked a soccer ball, his laughter echoing as Ellie and Sam chased him, their small feet pounding the earth. I sat on a bench, my watch catching the morning sun, its ticking a quiet hymn to this moment. The kids' joy was a balm, soothing the scars of weeks past. I leaned back, my hands loose, watching them play, their shadows dancing across the field. Michael jogged over, his cheeks flushed, his medal from graduation tucked in his pocket. You're staying, right, Grandpa? He asked, his voice earnest. No matter what. Always, I said, ruffling his hair. You, Ellie, Sam, you're my heart. Ellie ran up, her pigtails bouncing, and threw her arms around me. We love you, Grandpa. Sam followed, his hug fierce, his small hands sticky with ice cream. I held them close, my chest full, the weight of the fight fading under their warmth. I'd fought for this, for them, and I'd won. Footsteps crunched behind us. I turned, my spine stiffening as Scott approached, his hands in his pockets, his face drawn. The kids froze, their laughter fading. Michael stepped closer to me, his jaw tight. What do you want, Dad? He asked, his voice low. Scott cleared his throat, his eyes flickering to me. Can we talk, Douglas? Alone? I nodded to Michael, who hesitated before leading his siblings to the playground. I stood, my gaze steady. Say what you came to say. Scott shifted, his voice halting. Maybe we went too far. The party, the cafe. I didn't mean for it to go like this. I crossed my arms, my voice cold. You meant every word, Scott. You wanted me gone. You got your wish. He flinched, his hands clenching. I'm trying here. The house, the business, it's falling apart. People won't even look at us. Can't we start over? I saw him then, not as the son I'd raised, but as the man who'd betrayed me. The memory of his voice, you're nothing, cut deep, but I stood taller. You made your choice, I said. I'm done carrying you. But the kids? They're mine too. You don't get to take them from me. He opened his mouth, then closed it, his shoulders sagging. I won't, he muttered, stepping back. Just, don't disappear. I didn't answer. He walked away, his steps heavy, the distance between us a line I'd drawn and meant to keep. The kids ran back, their laughter returning, and we played until the sun dipped low. Later, in my apartment, I sat by the window, the sunset painting the sky in gold and pink. The photo of my grandkid sat on the shelf, its cracked frame a testament to battles fought. I set it straight, my fingers lingering, a smile tugging at my lips. I'd reclaimed my dignity, my place, my peace. The fight was over, but life wasn't. I stepped onto the balcony, the stars emerging one by one, their light steady above the quiet town. My watch ticked, a reminder that time moved forward, and so would I. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.